The cosmos is an illusion, having no real existence. This is the meaning of imagination. You imagine that the cosmos is something separate, existing by virtue of itself, and unconnected to al-Haq, but actually this is not so. Know that you are imagination, and all that you perceive, that is, for example, your statements about imagination, that I am not, is imagination. All existence is imagination within imagination. The only true existence is God. For Ibn Arabi, the whole cosmos, including us, is the product of imagination, since it is a mere shadow of al-Haq. Quote, know that which is said about other than al-Haq, or that which is called the cosmos relates to al-Haq as the shadow relates to a person. The cosmos is God's shadow. Regarding how the cosmos is God's shadow, Al-Koshani elucidates it clearly as follows. In order that there be shadow, there must necessarily be three things. First, a tall object which casts the shadow. Second, the place where it falls. And third, light by which alone shadow becomes distinctively existent. The object corresponds to the real wujud or al-Haq. The place in which shadow appears corresponds to the permanent entities of the possible things. If there were no place, shadow would never be sensible, but would remain something intelligible like a tree in a seed. It would remain in a state of potentiality in the object which would cast the shadow. The light corresponds to the divine name, the outward. If the cosmos had not come into contact with the wujud of al-Haq, the shadow would have never come to exist. It would have remained forever in the primordial non-existence which is characteristic of the possible things, considered in themselves without any relation to their originator, who brings them into the state of real existence. For shadow, in order to exist, needs the place as well as an actual contact with the thing that projects it. God, however, existed when there was nothing beside him, and in that state, he was completely self-sufficient, having no need of the whole cosmos. Al-Koshani elucidation makes it clear that the shadow is cast on the permanent entities or a'yanu thabita, rather than directly on what we call the cosmos. To put it another way, the very cosmos starts to exist on a level higher than this cosmos where we dwell. The cosmos has been created when the shadow of al-Haq is cast on the permanent entities, though technically the permanent entities are not the cosmos in and of themselves, but rather the place where the cosmos first appears. However, it is important to remember that shadow cannot be seen without light activity. That's why, according to Ibn Arabi, God has the divine name Light, An-Nur. Quote, the substrate of the appearance of this divine shadow, called the cosmos, is the permanent entities of the possible things over which the shadow spreads out. Thus, from the extension of this shadow, one can perceive the measure of the existence of this essence. It is by virtue of his name Light. Perception occurs, and the shadow spreads out over the permanent entities of the possible things in the form of unknown mystery. Do you not see that shadows incline to the black color, thus pointing to their hiddenness because of the remoteness between them and the things that cast them? Even if an object is white, its shadow will be black. The shadows of objects cast on the earth are said to have a dark, blackish hue, which is remarkable. The meaning of this is symbolic. In the first place, it denotes that the origin of the shadow in the specific situation that is the focus of our concern is a mystery and utterly unknowable. In the second place, the shadow's blackness tells us about the distance of it and its source. Al-Koshani explains the issue to us more clearly and more deeply. Quote, the permanent entities are dark because of their distance from the light of wujud. And when the light which is of a totally different nature from their own darkness spreads over them, their proper darkness of non-wujud affects the luminosity of wujud, and the light's nature turns toward darkness. In other words, the light of wujud turns in this way toward obscurity, just as the shadow does in relation to the thing which casts it. The relation of the relative wujud to the absolute wujud is exactly like that, so that if it were not for its being determined by the essences of the permanent entities of the possible things, the absolute wujud would shine forth with extreme incandescence and no one would be able to perceive it because of the intensity of the light. Thus, it comes about that those who are veiled by the darkness of determination see the word but do not see al-Haq, for being in utter darkness they do not see. But those who have come out of the veils of determinations witness al-Haq, for they have torn asunder the veil of darkness and veiled themselves with light against darkness, i.e. veiled themselves with the essence against the shadow. Those, however, who are not veiled by either of the two against the other can witness the light of al-Haq in the midst of the blackness and darkness of the creaturely world. Every object appears much smaller than it actually is, which is an important effect distance has on the sense of sight. This also carries a rich symbolic significance for Ibn Arabi. In the passage that follows, Ibn Arabi focuses on the effect of the distance between the permanent entities and al-Haq in producing the former's darkish color, and attempts to draw a comparison between it and our sensible world. Quote, "Do you not see the mountains that are distant from the observer appear to be black, but actually they might be of another color? Is there a cause of this but distance? The same is true as regards the blueness of the sky. This is what the effect of distance produces in the sense of sight with regard to non-luminous bodies. In like manner, the permanent entities of the possible things are non-luminous, because they are non-existent, even if they are described as fixed. However, they are not described as existent, for existence is light. Furthermore, distance causes the luminous bodies to appear small. Thus, this is another effect of distance. The sense of sight perceives them as small, but they are actually bigger than what is seen. As we know by proof, the sun is 160 times the size of the earth. However, by the sense of sight, it appears no larger than a shield. This is also the effect of distance. One knows of the cosmos only by the measure of what one knows of shadows. Similarly, al-Haq is not known just as the object which causes the appearance of the shadow is not known. He is known from the point of view of his shadow, but not from the point of view of the essence of the producer of the shadow. For this reason, we say that al-Haq is known from one aspect and not known from another. The source of the shadow in this comparison is al-Haq. It is significant to note that we can only know al-Haq in the same degree as we can know the shadow or the cosmos. If we stick with Ibn Arabi's explanation, this essentially means that al-Haq is only known as something black and small. And this is what most people think of when they think of Lord or God. We will never know the true something that casts the shadow. Ibn Arabi bases his claim on a few verses from the Quran, which he interprets in his esoteric manner like usual. Hast thou not seen how thy Lord spreads shadow? But if he so desired, he could make them stand still. The phrase stand still means remain within God in the state of potentiality. God means to say in this verse, it is not in the nature of al-Haq to manifest himself to the possible things, it as the permanent entities, unless there appears first upon them its shadow. Yet the shadow instead and in itself is no different from those of the possible things which have not yet been actualized by the appearance of the corresponding concrete things in the phenomenal world. Then we have made the sun its indicator. The sun, which is thus made to be the indicator of the shadow, is the divine name light, to which reference has already been made. And the sense bears witness to it as to the fact that the indicator of the shadow is no other than the light, because shadow have no real existence where there is no light. Then we withdraw it toward us with an easy withdrawal. God withdraws to himself the shadow because it is his shadow which he himself has projected. Thus everything appears from him and goes back to him, for it is he, no one else. Everything you perceive is the wujud of al-Haq as it appears through the essences of the permanent entities of the possible things. The same thing as the he-ness of al-Haq is his wujud, and as the divergence of forms is the essences of the permanent entities of the possible things. Just as the name shadow doesn't cease to subsist in it with the divergence of forms, the name cosmos doesn't cease to subsist in it with the divergence of forms. Likewise, the name other than al-Haq. With respect to its essential unity in being shadow, it is al-Haq, for he is the unique, the one. But with respect to the multiplicity of forms, it is the cosmos. There first appears a dark shadow over them when al-Haq desires to manifest himself in the permanent entities and through them in the concrete things. The shadow must first appear in order for the tajalli to happen. However, if God chooses to stop the shadow at this point, it would stay permanently in the state of potentiality and wouldn't proceed any further toward the level of concrete things. The shadow would then merely be another hypothetical possibility, much like the permanent entities themselves, which do not correspond to any realities in the phenomenal world. Furthermore, this means that the shadow, when spreading over on the permanent entities, can be seen in two opposite aspects, the unity and the diversity. As a matter of fact, the shadow, like any shadow in this physical realm, is only one, and in this aspect, it always points to the source. Or, to be more precise, it is al-Haq himself, since it is the direct projection of the plane of the divine unity. But in the aspect of diversity, the same shadow has diversified and led to the realm of concrete things. In other words, it is the cosmos itself. In this very sense, Ibn Arabi provokes us to see the whole cosmos as but the product of imagination. Quote, if the matter is as I have pointed out to you, then the cosmos is an illusion having no real existence. This is the meaning of imagination. You imagine that the cosmos is something separate, existing by virtue of itself and unconnected to al-Haq, but actually this is not so. Do you not see it by your sense of sight as connected to the object from which it extends? It is inconceivable that the shadow should be separated from this connection, because it is inconceivable that a thing should be separated from its essence. As a result, you should know your essence, who you are, what your ipseity is, and what your relationship to al-Haq is. Also, you should know through which thing you are al-Haq and through which thing you are the cosmos, other, and something different from al-Haq. The cosmos has an immediate connection to al-Haq that can never be loosed because of the shadow of al-Haq. Each and every part of the cosmos represents a distinct aspect of al-Haq, and al-Haq in a certain state of determination. Because of human beings' consciousness, he is in unique position to understand deeply within himself the ontological relationship between the shadow and al-Haq, given the fact that human being is a part of the cosmos. Human being's level of knowledge is measured from the extent to which he truly knows this ontological relation. Therefore, there must be several levels of knowledge. Quote, this gives rise to a number of degrees amongst the knowers. Thus, some are simply knowers and some others knowers in a higher level. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.